Hey, we got a good one for you today on this podcast. Today we have Igor Kudryk, well known in the LinkedIn Salesforce ecosystem. How you doing, Igor?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I know you currently focus on teaching Salesforce admins how to become developers. You've been pretty out there on LinkedIn, a great following. I consider you a one of one. I don't think there's anyone like you out there right now. So I consider Igor as his own brand. He's a one of one. So I'm pumped to have you on today.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to hear that. It was a lot of work.
It's yep. So how did you first get introduced to Salesforce?
That was interesting because I think as for a lot of people who started around like 2019, it was more or less by accident. I wanted to work in a small company because I wanted to learn from the founder of the company. So I was searching for consultancies or some kind of like very small companies that have, let's say, up to 10 people. And I wanted to be super near to the founder. And then one evening, I apply for the job. And then 3 hours later, I hear at like 8 o'clock in the evening, I hear from this founder. And he says, hey, let's do a quick interview. And then he sends me a link to the Zoom. And I'm like, what? Well, yeah, now I'm not ready. So I'm joining the Zoom link. And he hires me pretty much on the spot because he wanted someone who can speak Ukrainian. So I'm originally from Ukraine and speak German and who understands how to code. So I was basically a bridge between German people and the development team in Ukraine. And I had no idea what was Salesforce, but it was perfect. I just said, let's go, let's dive in, let's start. And that's how I end up doing Salesforce just by accident.
Yep, it's a familiar story. The accidental admin, the accidental Salesforce developer. That's awesome. So then early on, just jumping in there, what were some of like the challenges that you encountered right away when you started looking at things, got into Salesforce? What were some of those initial challenges and issues and things you had to work through?
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned like accidental developer or something. I think it's interesting that people who are working as a Salesforce developers, what I see usually, they're coming from two different backgrounds. So the first very common background is that people who were already developers, right? So they worked in other fields like Java or any other field as a developer. Some of them work like 10 years in other fields. Some of them work like 2 years in other fields, right? And then they have to learn Salesforce platform itself. And then there are other types of people who are already working with Salesforce in some or another form, like admins, BAs, right? And they want to learn all the parts of the Salesforce platform. So they have to learn this development part, which is like sometimes is a big part of the job, for example, for architects, right? And they're coming from this background. So for me, it was definitely the background from the developer. I was already the developer, so I had to learn all the Salesforce stuff. And yeah, it was weird times because we had process builders, workflows, and all of that. But I think when you're a developer, you kind of can understand a lot of those type of things. Because, for example, a flow, you can build a flow already like by intuition because you already know how to code, and flow is pretty much like a programming language, but it's visual. So it was an interesting learning curve because I had to learn all the business aspects because I didn't have that much of the working experience. I had to learn how to speak with people. I had to learn how to do Salesforce, all the things. And I guess that was my biggest shortcoming and the biggest challenge in the first year of working as a Salesforce developer, because I could write code, but I didn't know how to do all the business part and all the automation, all the admin part. And I actually, like, the first certification that I took was heavy admin certification, and I failed it.
Right. It's a different concept, right? And I've managed software development teams back in the day, like Java, C++, C Sharp, all that stuff. And a lot of times the people that are just developers, like straight up developers, get really frustrated when they have to learn like a platform like Salesforce, a ServiceNow, Remedy, BMC, something that's more configuration and a a RAD tool, something that's more configurable, because they're like, I want to do this with code. I know I can do this with code. Why do I have to do it this other way? I don't understand. Why would I do that? Right. And a lot of people, a good percentage kind of give up, right? They're like, I need to code. I can't do that. That's interesting. So I guess, so then how did your roles and skills evolve going from that point up until now? How did that transition go from learning that into where you are today?
So I think one of the biggest aspects that actually helped me in this, and I agree, a lot of developers are stubborn and they're gonna defend Apex and coding for
Yes.
forever, and they're gonna say, no, I'm gonna stick to the
Yes.
coding. I can do it quicker with the coding, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I was definitely one of them in the first, I would say, year. But what helped me is actually understanding more business, because I always wanted to start a business. I always was trying to do different side hustles. I had, I don't know how many dead Instagram accounts where I was trying to do something. So when I started to get a little bit more familiar with the business, and I was helping my parents, for example, with the business, I kind of started understanding that developers are actually just kind of a resource. I don't want to like say it in that way. It's probably not a good phrasing, but the business employs developers, not because the business want to write code, right? The business employs developers because the business want to solve some kind of business problem. And sometimes it can be solved with the coding, and sometimes it can be solved with some other automation. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be solved, right? So sometimes the best solution to a business problem is just forget about it and like don't do this, right? So like do something else, reallocate resources somewhere else. And I like this realization hit me hard when at one point we had a client and we developed like an MVP for the client. We developed like a demo for the solution, and the client just went to the meeting and he said, I don't care about the solution anymore. Forget about it. I'm gonna just do with the spreadsheets. I was like, how? I don't understand. How can you do it with the spreadsheets if we developed for you? Like we are ready to develop. Just pay us X amount of money and we're gonna develop for you the automation. But not everything has to be automated. Not everything has to be solved in business. And when I started understanding these things, when I started getting more experience working in the company itself, working for the clients, I kind of started seeing, okay, I don't have to write the code to solve the problem. You can do it other way around. And if you have to write code, then it needs to be justified, right? It needs to solve a certain problem. It needs to serve a purpose, and you need to have a good explanation. Why are you actually doing the coding instead of doing it in spreadsheet, or why do you even need to do anything about what are you trying to solve?
Right. And it's totally because technical debt gets associated with that, right? I mean, do you feel that's why we are having the technical debt in the Salesforce ecosystem that we have today, is because people were building things just for the sake of building things and automating things?
Yes, I think that a lot of inexperienced developers, when they don't know the solution. So here's how it looked like for me. When I was starting, and maybe to the like side note to this, I was working in consulting, right? So consulting, this is where you can work on like 3-5 different projects at the same time. So you're getting thrown into many projects, and if you work 2 years in consulting, you've seen probably like 20-30 project, depends on the company. So what happens is that a lot of inexperienced developers like I was, for example, they tend to like just go hard and code everything because they can, right? They go and overcomplicate a lot of things, and they start doing coding where you don't have to do any coding, and then obviously it grows. And that happens with the inexperienced developers, but also with the inexperienced admins, right? Because when admin sees the problem, the only solution that he or she sees is the flow or a process builder, right? So depending from which side you're coming, you're throwing different tools on it, and not always the right tool. And that's why at the end, we end up either with too many flows that no one can comprehend, and developers are just cursing endlessly to like just read those type of things, Or we end up with admins who curse the developers and say, what the hell did they do? Why do you need code for this? I can solve it in like 2 clicks here.
Yep, exactly. Yep. That's awesome. I completely agree. And then, so I'm assuming you must have recognized something in the industry, right? You're in the middle of these two roles. You're learning Salesforce. You see the admins, you see the developers, and you're working through these consulting projects. You're seeing what the business truly wants, what they don't want. You're seeing and recognizing there's a skill mismatch and people need to learn things on both sides. So I guess, how did that translate into you recognizing there was maybe a need to start maybe getting into what you do, which is training admins to become developers?
Yes. So when I myself was learning how to code, which was when I was 16 years old, probably. When I was learning how to code, I was lucky to found a couple of different websites that helped me a lot. Like they helped me, they really shaped my developer skills. And one of them was with practicing a lot of coding small tasks. And I just went crazy into these things. And I mean, this is good when you want to learn something, right? You can just go into total obsession. And I was sitting somewhere in the high school and I was hiding like the mobile phone and was trying to solve some programming. So I went crazy into it and I solved like hundreds of tasks. And when I went to the Salesforce, when I started working in Salesforce, I wanted to do the same with the Apex, with LWC, with all the Salesforce development topics, and I could not find anything. And especially it was 2019. So I went from another world of a lot of different things, a lot of courses, a lot of those type of things. And then I went to the Salesforce and I could not find for myself anything. Or whatever I was finding, like it was not good enough for me. It was not the best quality that I saw from the other courses in other industries. And I started writing about this, and somehow people liked it at the end.
Interesting, because I know there's, if I recall, there's the Salesforce partner portal, there's Trailhead, and then there was a lot of websites that had almost like Stack Overflow style of information, maybe like how to do this, how to do that, but nothing put together in like more of a training type of style, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The difference is that when someone learns Salesforce, I think it's a little bit different from learning coding, because in the Salesforce itself, you have just a different approach. You have clicks, right? You have to navigate through stuff. So it's way easier to show you how to do something, right? And then you have to follow it. And then with enough experience, you understand how to do it. But when you learn how to code, you need to learn a whole different mind shift. You have to shift your mind and you have to learn a lot of very theoretical concepts that you cannot explain in like very quick. So you have to go down and you have to, similar to math, right? So you have to imagine those concepts that don't exist in the real world. And that's why I think that Salesforce had a lot of emphasis on these no coding tools, right? And in 2019 and up to even now, they didn't really build enough of education things for people who want to learn how to code on Salesforce.
And that's a good question. So from like who you're really trying to help and who you're trying to really reach out to with this training, I guess like essentially your ICP, who specifically are they? I know, are they just Salesforce admins? Are they more advanced admins? Like who specifically are the perfect profile of people that you help take from admins to developers?
I think this is what I realized at some point, that some people gonna have a super easy time to learn Salesforce development, and some people it's probably not the right step to do. So what I definitely don't do is that I don't help people to break into the ecosystem, right? Because I don't think that this is the right choice for someone who doesn't know Salesforce and doesn't know how to code. I don't think it's the right thing to go and try to become a Salesforce developer. You need to learn either of them, and then you can go into Salesforce. So what I found that people who are in the senior level, senior admins, senior BAs, architects, application architects, right? When they learn how to code, they suddenly unlock a big chunk of Salesforce. Because when you're trying to move from a senior admin and you kind of think, okay, what is my next step, right? I know everything about administration or about business analysts, right? What is my next step? Usually, you have this dark room sitting, and it's Apex, LWC, it's all the Salesforce development stuff that you have never touched because it was just not the priority, right? So when people like senior admins and architects, when they unlock this room, when they learn how to code, suddenly the amount of things they can do becomes way better. They don't need to rely on the developers all the time to fix an easy bug. They don't need to go and wait until the developer wakes up somewhere overseas. They can move quicker, they can manage the team sometimes better, and they have a greater unlock. And those are the people that I usually work with.
Interesting. That's awesome. And it sounds like it's a combination of live calls with them to give feedback along with content that they go through on their own, like homework or course type of material.
Exactly, yeah. So basically, I sit down with people, we code together, I show everything, how everything works, everything that I learned in the last 5 years working as a Salesforce developer. And we code together and bring them on the real projects that I took I stripped down the projects that were my freelance projects. I made them, adjusted them to be able to solve them for them. And like this, I move people from zero sometimes from some already coding skills to being able to be completely self-sufficient in Salesforce development.
Awesome. And I guess if people on a side note are interested, they just hit you up on LinkedIn, or how do they go about reaching out to you if they're interested?
LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good segue because you're pretty well known on LinkedIn. And I know you went from, I don't know, a few hundred followers to like, I think over 25,000, if I got the number right. So I'm assuming LinkedIn is your main place for your lead generation and getting your word and your name out there. So I guess how did that evolve, and not your secret sauce, but how did you go from a few hundred to over 20,000 in such a fast amount of time?
Yeah. So I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best platform for me that I use right now. And how I found it was actually quite interesting because as I said, I was trying different things. I had, for example, an Instagram account that was teaching people how to move to Germany. Right? I moved to Germany myself, and then I was like, okay, let me actually teach people how to do that. And when I was looking at the numbers on those Instagram accounts, it was not great. But then what I did is that I posted one certification on LinkedIn, and I got like 5,000 impressions, and like 70 likes from my colleagues. And I saw this 5,000 impressions, and I was like, I will never be able to reach this number with a tiny Instagram account. So I started posting more things. And the thing about LinkedIn is that I think it's a very viral platform. So whenever you post there, I think if you're posting great things, I think you have a great chance there to have a really big reach. And that's what I've been. But for that, you need to learn how to do the copywriting, right? So you need to learn hooks and all of those type of things.
Right, because I think people on LinkedIn, and I know we talked about this before, but I think people on LinkedIn are in a few different camps. And one is they talk about themselves, right? And what they're doing, right? I mean, those are fine just to get your name and all that stuff out there. And then the second bucket is people talking to their peers, right? They're kind of trying to show their peers how good they are, how smart they are. Hey, I'm good at this. And it's more of a peer, like, hey, look what I'm doing. And I think there's the third camp that's talking about their maybe customers or potential customers or their clients and their pain points and how you can help them, and giving knowledge out there on LinkedIn. And I think the third camp is where the engagement and the impressions and where the interest in the viral content starts to take off.
Absolutely. And I think that exactly because of the reasons that you mentioned, because a lot of people, they talk about like, oh, happy to announce, I took a position as a senior Salesforce admin at a corporation Yeah, so this is a lot of posts on LinkedIn like this. And when you apply something, when you apply the copywriting skills, when you apply the knowledge from the other platforms like Twitter X, right, or Instagram or YouTube, when you apply those skills on LinkedIn, you can actually stand out so much, right? So because everyone is just posting certifications and all of this. And this was a big unlock for me because I learned those skills. I learned a little bit of copywriting before LinkedIn. And then it's interesting to take a field that doesn't use something and apply a skill that is kind of not really related, because usually people don't think about LinkedIn, or at least they didn't think when I started. Now more people think about LinkedIn as a like source for the leads and the way to build a community, the way to get rich, to get like reach, not to reach the money, but more impressions and just get your name out. Yeah, so it's relatively easy to stand out there.
I think if people, again, because not everyone's on LinkedIn to get leads or to get clients or to get, right? So, and that's fine, right? I'm at Dreamforce. Here's a picture of me with someone in the background, whatever. That's fine. But if you're really trying to get engagement, I think the biggest thing to think about, if you're thinking in terms of the person reading your content or reading your post, is just what's in it for me, is what they're thinking, because we're all that way. So just a tip for anybody that's trying to write content on LinkedIn, a good place to start is just put yourself in the mind of the person you're trying to talk to and think to yourself, like, they're thinking like, what's in it for me? And kind of start writing your content like that, and you'll get better and better over time. And I think, at least from a tip perspective, I think that's what you're kind of saying too, is like, that's what the focus is. So that's actually good stuff. And so moving forward, what are you seeing in terms of the admins, developers, the Salesforce ecosystem, especially from a talent perspective? Where do you see things going moving forward with those roles, like in the next 3 to 5 years?
This is super interesting because I have a controversial take on it. And this is something that helps, for example, on LinkedIn when you have some relatively controversial, I mean, everything that we write on LinkedIn is not that controversial, right? You're not writing about politics or something. You're writing about certifications. It can't be that controversial. But I have a controversial take where I think that the admin role is going to be transformed into some kind of developer-like role. And I think the admins that gonna fail to understand coding or the coding concepts, they're gonna have a way harder times. And why do I think? Because when I look back when I started 5 years ago, the Salesforce admin 5 years ago is not the Salesforce admin right now. In fact, back then we wouldn't call the Salesforce admins that people work right now, we wouldn't call them Salesforce admins. We would call them something like kind of developers, right? Because now you need the requirements for automation, the requirements for writing flows, they're so much higher. And sometimes even in the job descriptions, you see we need apex understanding from Salesforce admins, right?
Right.
So
right.
I think that it's gonna only get more crazy, and I think that now the Salesforce goes all in on the flows, and it's gonna get more complex. And those roles, they're gonna pretty much merge.
That's an interesting take, and I agree. I think I've been thinking that for a while. I've always thought Salesforce, I mean, it's evolved over 20 years, but it's a development platform. It's not a website like it was in 2004, a simple website where you just submit leads. It's a full-blown development platform. So given that, are you thinking in 5 years that when someone wants to enter the ecosystem, are they going to be able to start with an admin certification, or are they going to be really jumping right into a developer training or certification? How do you envision getting your foot in the door into the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that at least right now what we see, right, is that it became incredibly hard to jump into the Salesforce ecosystem as an admin. It's way harder right now than it was 5 years ago or any time ago, basically. And I think it's only gonna get worse, because what I see that we're gonna have two skills that are super important: business skills and the development skills. And everything that's going to be in between is going to be kind of harder for people to get into, right? So if you're not good at business and if you're not good at development, then it's kind of hard to integrate you everywhere, right? Because those are two fundamental skills that you basically need. So I think that's going to get even worse, especially now with the AI. AI going to make users more productive, right? So the user is going to eat up of the administration a little bit. Developers more productive, so developers can do 100 things at the same time. So I think it's going to only get worse. But of course, no one knows the future. So I have no idea. Let's see how it's going to how it's going to end up.
Right. No, for sure. And so for an admin, right? So someone that's sitting there now, they have like 1 or 2 or 3 years of their admin. There's obviously the developer path that they can go. I guess in your mind, what are some other paths they can maybe go from an admin if it's not developer?
I think the best path is something that has to do with the people, right? So you work somehow with the people, you go into the management position, or you try to lead the teams, and then maybe become some kind of like CTO or something like this. Or you go more a nerdy part and you try to become a developer, and then maybe you also want to switch into some kind of more management position or people position. But I kind of envision it in the way that people skills, like when the more AI gets popular, the more we're gonna kind of see the pushback and want to have like this human touch to a lot of things. So I think that the human skills, communication, all those soft skills, they're gonna be super important. But I also, of course, bet on the development skills as well.
Yeah, because it makes sense, right? Because you're armed with if you're an admin and you have 1, 2, 3 years of experience, if you don't want to do the developer route, you're armed with some really good technical info to be a liaison with the business client. The business is like, hey, can Salesforce do this? Or can you help me understand Salesforce? You're equipped to be able to explain Salesforce pretty well versus someone that doesn't have an admin cert or that experience. So you have a really good way to speak intelligently about the platform, be that conduit. Again, probably maybe a business analyst or a product owner is maybe a good fit as well, just having that background of knowledge. I agree. And then so given where you're thinking the ecosystem is going and changing in the next 3 to 5 years, is that making you revamp your training or maybe creating some new kind of training that you're going to plan coming up to adapt to those changes?
Yes, since I started with the Salesforce, I was dreaming about developing a platform that helped me to learn how to code. Because I remember how much it helped me. It basically, I went from Ukraine, like quite a poor country, to living in Germany, and I enjoyed it. And it was my dream, and it helped me to learn how to code. And I wanted to develop the same platform for Salesforce. So the platform that basically brings people from zero to being Salesforce developers, or at least to help them learning how to code in Apex, right? So I'm not teaching right now like every single topic on Salesforce with this platform, but the platform launches on the 18th of November, and that's a big deal for me. It's gonna be approximately 1 year since we started developing all of this, and it's completely self-written. So I hired a developer, awesome developer. We are working together with this developer. We are coding. We are nerding out about how to make this platform really good. So you can think about it as a like Trailhead competitor, but designed specifically to bring people from zero to being able to code in Apex. And it's going to be out on 18th, and it's called Learn.
Nice, that's awesome. So are people going to be able to essentially go to this learn-apex.com and just sign up, pay like whatever fee or something, and they're just able to launch right in there, and they don't need the live calls, and they can just do it all on their own? Or will there still be like a live call component to it as well to help them?
It's completely self-paced, right? So we have things like gamification, XP, streak, all of this type of things to keep people accountable as much as possible, of course, because no course can help anyone if you don't actually do the job, right? So it's more like a supplement. Like when you go to the gym, if you take creatine, protein on top of that, that helps. But if you don't go to the gym, you can take as much protein as you want.
Right. So That's awesome. So November 18th, that's launching. That's fantastic. And is the target the same in terms of the ICP and kind of the people that would be interested in that? Is it the same as it is currently, or is it a little bit different?
Yes, non-developers, everyone who is an admin, a BA, architect who is not actively working with Salesforce and want to get started with Apex, that's for them.
Awesome. So I can tell you're a passionate guy, which I love. So how do you stay motivated and inspired with the work that you're doing?
I don't know. I'm just motivated all the time. I have little obsessions, and I think the hardest part for me is actually doing something long term. Because I always find new obsessions and I always switch to different things. And when I switch to something, I just cannot stop. So I think the hardest part for me is actually staying long term in something. So for example, building a business is quite a challenge because you cannot switch to a new thing all the time. That's a very bad way of building a business when you're constantly doing something else, right? So this is the hardest part of it.
Right. And that was like my next question. What advice would you give to someone that's trying to start their own thing or their own business or their own XYZ?
Find your obsessions. That helped me so much. Like this platform or LinkedIn posts that I do, like I do on LinkedIn those carousels or something. People cannot really see it, but sometimes I'm sitting and I'm lining up pixels on the presentation because I'm so obsessed with like just making it right, making the right thing. And I think if you can define some obsession and then spend like a year on it, or maybe even 6 months, I think that would be, or till the end of the year. There's, I don't know, like 60 days left, 70 days left, and you can obsess over one thing. And I think a lot of great things coming out of those type of things.
And I guess to wrap it up, great combo so far. So I think people might want to know, and I definitely want to know. So what is your goals for the future and your business, and where is Igor going in the next 3, 5, 7 years?
I don't know where I'm gonna be in 7 years because who knows if those obsessions gonna overtake me or not. But I'm definitely focused on building the best learning things for Salesforce developers because we are still missing so much in the Salesforce ecosystem. For example, me as a developer, as an experienced developer with I don't know, I spent 5 years, right, as a Salesforce developer. I cannot find a single training that's gonna go into advanced, super advanced, nerdy stuff. It's very hard to find advanced things. It's very hard to find for people who want to switch into development. It's very hard to find also this niche type of things where like front-end development on Salesforce, back-end development on Salesforce. And we still have so much to do in the ecosystem. And I hope that other people are going to hear it maybe, and they're also going to start doing these type of things because right now, a lot of people, they focus on Apex, they focus on, basically on Apex. But it's not the only thing that we have, not the only thing that we are lacking in the Salesforce development ecosystem, right? We are lacking, for example, LWC things. We are lacking so much. We are lacking all the other upskilling trainings. We are lacking enough trainings for architects, for example. If you're an architect, it's very hard to upskill. So we don't have like businesses that serve specifically those people. And this is something that I'm still going to be devoting a lot of time, and we have endless amount of work there.
Awesome. So I'm pretty sure that if I would look in the future, Igor is definitely going to be there doing something, helping the ecosystem, helping the community. I think you're also inspiring people and motivating people. People listening to this, seeing this, I think you're a pretty inspirational guy. So I definitely think people should follow you and watch what you're doing. I'm excited for we'll just call it version 2 of your thing to come out. And what's the address of that again? Going to be on November 18th?
Yes, it's learn-apex.com.
Perfect.
Learnapex.com.
Awesome. It was fantastic having you on today, Igor. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.